People like you don't belong here. And if you don't turn around in the next 30 seconds, I will personally make sure you never set foot in any building in this city again." The security chief's hand rested on his belt, 2 inches from the baton. 47 floors of glass and steel loomed overhead. The woman in the gray wool coat didn't move, didn't blink, didn't look away. What Hank Crenshaw didn't know, what no one in that lobby knew, was that 3 weeks ago, this woman had signed a $2.3 billion check. And as of 11:59 p.m. last night, she owned every inch of the ground he was standing on. The lobby cameras recorded everything. 8 of them. She had counted. 30 seconds, Hank repeated. His voice echoed off the marble. The woman reached into her coat pocket, slowly, deliberately. Hank's fingers closed around the baton handle. She pulled out a small notebook, flipped it open, clicked a pen. "Your name," she said quietly. "Spell it for me." 3 weeks earlier, Vivian Mercer sat alone in a Manhattan penthouse that most people would never know existed. No doorman, no concierge. The kind of building where privacy was the only luxury that mattered. The document on her desk was 417 pages. Stock purchase agreement. Crestwood Marsh Industries, Inc. Total transaction value, $2.3 billion. She turned to the signature page. Her name was already there, written in black ink that had dried 6 hours ago. Vivian closed the folder, placed it in the desk drawer, checked the combination lock, then checked it again. Then a third time. Old habits, from a life where one mistake could make a person disappear. Her phone buzzed. A single message from an unlisted number. "Transfer complete. Obsidian Holdings Group LLC now controls 51% of Crestwood Marsh voting shares. Congratulations, Ms. Mercer." She didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. $2.3 billion. And she was about to spend the next 2 weeks pretending to be nobody. If this satisfying, click the subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss what happens next. Char chug. The flight from LaGuardia to Atlanta left at 6:15 a.m. Vivian sat in seat 34B, middle seat, economy class, between a college student with headphones and a businessman who smelled like airport bourbon. She wore a gray hoodie, faded jeans, a baseball cap pulled low. No makeup, no jewelry except a thin silver chain her mother had given her 23 years ago. No one looked at her twice. That was the point. The in-flight magazine had a 3-page spread about Crestwood Marsh Industries. Atlanta's real estate empire, a family legacy. The photos showed gleaming towers, smiling executives, a skyline that seemed to promise unlimited growth. The article mentioned Rutherford Marsh III 5 times. CEO, third-generation heir, a visionary leader carrying his grandfather's torch into the 21st century. Vivian read every word. Then she closed the magazine, tucked it into the seat pocket, and closed her eyes. She had read the real numbers, the ones that didn't make it into magazines. 3 discrimination lawsuits in 7 years, all settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements. An EEOC complaint in 2019 that vanished without explanation. Turnover rates for black employees nearly triple the company average. The quarterly reports showed profit. The internal files showed something else entirely. That was why she was here. Not to fix a company. To find out if it could be fixed at all. The Airbnb in West End was a 2-bedroom with bars on the windows and a kitchen that smelled faintly of bleach. Vivian paid cash. 3 weeks in advance, no questions asked. She unpacked a single suitcase, 3 changes of clothes, a laptop, a voice recorder that fit in her palm, and a folder, thin, unmarked, containing exactly 14 photographs. The photographs were of people. Faces she had memorized from LinkedIn profiles and company directories. Rutherford Marsh III, CEO. Paige Thornberry, VP of Marketing. Wendell Pruitt, General Counsel. Celine Rourke, executive assistant, Hank Crenshaw, head of security. Vivian pinned the photographs to the wall beside her bed, one by one, like a detective building a case, because that's exactly what she was doing. Chapter Day 1. Vivian arrived at Crestwood Marsh headquarters at 8:45 a.m., dressed like a woman looking to rent office space. Gray wool coat, dark slacks, a leather bag that had seen better days. The lobby was everything the magazines promised. 40-foot ceilings, Italian marble, a waterfall feature that cost more than most houses. And at the center of it all, a reception desk that gleamed like an altar. The woman behind the desk was blonde, mid-20s, with a smile that had been professionally calibrated. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm interested in commercial space. The listing mentioned availability on the 12th floor." The receptionist's eyes moved. Down, up, a micro-expression that lasted less than a second, but said everything. "The 12th floor is our Class A executive space, starting at $85 per square foot." A pause. "Do you have an appointment?" The way she said appointment, like she already knew the answer. "I was hoping to schedule one." "I see." The receptionist typed something. Her nails clicked against the keyboard with unnecessary force. "Unfortunately, our leasing team is fully booked this week. I can put you on a waiting list or—" Another pause. "There are some properties in College Park that might be more suited to various needs." College Park, the neighborhood where median income dropped by 60%. Vivian's hand moved to her pocket. She pulled out the notebook, wrote the date, the time, the receptionist's name, Kelsey, according to the brass nameplate. "What are you writing?" "Notes. I like to keep records of my conversations." Kelsey's smile flickered. "That's unusual." "I find it useful." Before Kelsey could respond, the elevator doors opened behind them. The sound of heels on marble. Sharp. Deliberate. The walk of someone who expected the world to move aside. Vivian didn't turn around. She watched the reflection in the waterfall's glass panel instead. Paige Thornberry, VP of Marketing. Red Valentino dress. 4-inch heels. Hair in perfect waves that probably took 90 minutes every morning. "Kelsey, is there a problem?" "No, Ms. Thornberry. This woman was asking about the 12th floor, but I explained—" "I heard." Paige stepped closer. Her perfume arrived before she did, something floral and aggressive. "Ma'am, I'm afraid the 12th floor isn't available for general inquiries. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable looking at our satellite properties. College Park has some excellent options for diverse needs." There it was again. That word, diverse, said like a synonym for lesser. Vivian closed her notebook, slipped it back into her pocket. "Thank you for your time." She turned toward the door, but as she walked, she counted. 2 security cameras above the reception desk. 1 in each corner, 1 hidden in the waterfall feature. She caught the glint of the lens behind the glass. 5 cameras total, just in this section of the lobby. Paige's voice followed her. "Kelsey, make a note. If she comes back, call security first." Vivian pushed through the revolving door. The Atlanta sun hit her face, warm and indifferent. Day 1. 7 incidents documented, and she hadn't even made it past the lobby. That night, Vivian sat cross-legged on the Airbnb bed, laptop open, phone recording. Day 1 summary. Initial contact with Crestwood Marsh headquarters. Encountered discriminatory treatment from receptionist, designation Kelsey, last name unknown. Subsequent interaction with Paige Thornberry, VP of Marketing. Both individuals made references to diverse needs and suggested relocation to lower-income areas without inquiry into my financial qualifications. Pattern consistent with documented complaints in EEOC file 2019 ATL 00234. She paused the recording, looked at the photographs on the wall. Rutherford Marsh III smiled back at her. The same smile from the magazine, the smile of a man who had never been told no. She would meet him soon enough. Day 3. Vivian returned to Crestwood Marsh. Different clothes this time. A blazer over a simple blouse, slacks that cost $12 at a thrift store. She carried a folder with printouts from the company website. The lobby was busier at 10 a.m. Businessmen in suits, women in heels. Everyone walking with purpose, everyone belonging, except her. She approached a different part of the lobby, the visitor services desk, separate from reception. A young man sat behind it, maybe 22, with a name tag that read Tyler. "Hi, I'm attending the Commercial Real Estate Investor Seminar at 2 p.m. I registered online." Tyler checked his computer. Mercer? Yes, here you are. Vivian Mercer, Conference Room 3B. Here's your visitor badge. He handed her a lanyard with a paper badge. Elevators are to your left. 3rd floor, follow the signs. Thank you. Vivian clipped the badge to her blazer. She walked toward the elevators, feeling Kelsey's eyes on her back from across the lobby. But she had a badge now. Documentation. Legitimacy. The elevator arrived. She stepped inside. A hand shot through the closing doors. Hank Crenshaw, head of security, 6'2", former police officer, 15 years according to his personnel file. The kind of man who had spent his career being right about everything and would not tolerate being wrong. "Ma'am, I need to see that badge." Vivian held it up without removing it from her blazer. Hank barely glanced at it. "Where are you going?" "Conference Room 3B, the investor seminar." "I'll need to check your bag." The visitor policy states that registered seminar attendees are exempt from bag checks unless there's a level orange security alert or higher. Hank's eyes narrowed. "How do you know what the visitor policy states?" "It's posted on your website, Section 4, Paragraph 2. Silence. The elevator doors tried to close again. Hank's arm stopped them. "I don't care what the website says. I'm head of security. If I want to check your bag, I check your bag." Vivian didn't move, didn't step back. Her weight was centered, shoulders relaxed, hands visible at her sides. "Is there a specific reason you've selected me for additional screening?" "I don't need a specific reason." "Actually, you do. Inconsistent application of security protocols can form the basis for claims under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, 42 U.S.C. Section 2000E, particularly when the pattern suggests individuals are selected based on race rather than objective security criteria." She said it the way someone might recite a recipe. Calm, factual, without heat. Hank's face changed. The confidence flickered. Just for a moment. Then it hardened into something worse. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm providing information. What you do with it is your choice." The elevator doors pushed against his arm. Once, twice, a voice from behind them. "Hank, what's going on here? Rutherford Marsh III." In person, he looked exactly like his photographs. Silver-templed hair, navy three-piece suit, family crest on his lapel. The smile was there too, but sharper. The smile of a man who owned things. "Mr. Marsh, this woman was resisting a standard security check." "I was not resisting. I was quoting your own posted policy." Rutherford's eyes moved to Vivian, the same assessment she had seen from Kelsey, from Paige. The quick calculation of worth based on appearance. "Ma'am, this is private property. Our security personnel have full authority to conduct searches at their discretion. If you have a problem with that, the door is right there." He pointed. The gesture was dismissive. Final. Vivian looked at him, held his gaze for 3 full seconds. "I understand," she said. "I'll attend the seminar now." She stepped back into the elevator. The doors closed on Rutherford's confused expression. He had expected her to leave, not to proceed. 3rd floor, Conference Room 3B. She found a seat in the back row and opened her notebook. Date, time, names, exact quotes. The seminar speaker droned on about market projections. Vivian didn't hear a word. She was too busy documenting. The seminar ended at 4:15 p.m. Vivian filed out with the other attendees, mostly white men in expensive suits who hadn't noticed her the entire time. She was halfway to the elevator when a hand touched her elbow. "Ms. Mercer?" She turned. A young black man, maybe mid-20s, in a Crestwood Marsh IT uniform. He spoke quickly, quietly, like he was afraid of being overheard. "I saw what happened this morning, in the elevator, with Hank." "I don't know what you mean." "I was at the security desk. I saw the whole thing." He glanced around. "I just wanted to say, you're not the first, and you should be careful." "Careful of what?" "Of them. All of them." He started to turn away, then stopped. "My name's Malik Odoms, IT department. If you ever need documentation, I might be able to help." He was gone before she could respond. Disappeared into a service corridor. Vivian stood alone in the hallway. She added his name to her notebook. Malik Odoms, potential ally. Approach with caution. Day 5. Vivian received an email at 7:22 a.m. from events@crestwoodmarsh.com. "Dear Ms. Mercer, you are cordially invited to an exclusive preview of our new executive leasing options. Date: today, 2:00 p.m. Location: 40th floor executive suite. Please present this email to security for access. Best regards, Crestwood Marsh events team." She read it 3 times. The 40th floor was the executive level. Restricted access. No seminar, no public event, no legitimate reason for a visitor to be there. It was a trap. She knew it was a trap. She went anyway. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this goes. The elevator to the 40th floor required a key card. Vivian showed the email to the security guard at the elevator bank. Not Hank, a younger man who barely looked at her. 40th floor event. Here's your temporary access." He swiped his card. The elevator doors opened. Vivian stepped inside, pressed 40, watched the numbers climb. The doors opened onto silence. The 40th floor was nothing like the lobby. Here, the wealth was quieter. Thicker carpets, softer lighting. Oil paintings of the Marsh family on the walls. 3 generations of men in suits, each one looking more satisfied than the last. "Ms. Mercer?" Celine Rourke, executive assistant to the CEO. She emerged from a doorway at the end of the hall, her heels making no sound on the carpet. "Thank you for coming, but I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" "The preview event was canceled this morning. We sent an email to all registrants." Celine's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't receive it?" Vivian checked her phone. No cancellation email. Nothing since the original invitation. "I didn't receive any cancellation notice." "How unfortunate. But regardless, you're now on the executive floor without proper authorization. This is a restricted area. I'll need to ask you to leave, or I'll have to call security." Celine's hand moved toward the phone on a nearby desk. "That won't be necessary. I'll show myself out." Vivian turned back toward the elevator. But as she walked, she heard Celine's voice, low, meant for the phone but not quite quiet enough. She came up, just like you said she would. The elevator doors opened. Vivian stepped inside. She pressed the button for the lobby, but before the doors closed, she did one thing. She held up her phone. The screen showed a recording app. A red dot, still blinking. Active for 9 minutes, 43 seconds. Celine's face went pale. The doors closed. Day 8. Vivian sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Crestwood Marsh headquarters. Her laptop was open to a secure email server. Her phone displayed the audio file from 2 days ago. She typed, "Marcus, audio file attached. Timestamp 2:15 p.m. through 2:24 p.m. Location, 40th floor executive suite, Crestwood Marsh Industries. Relevant excerpt begins at minute 7. She came up, just like you said she would. Suggests coordinated effort to create pretext for security action. Please advise on relevance to pattern and practice documentation. VM. She hit send, closed the laptop. Her coffee had gone cold. She drank it anyway. Outside the window, the Crestwood Marsh Tower gleamed in the afternoon sun. 47 floors of glass and steel and institutional racism wrapped in Italian marble. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, her attorney. Got the file. This is good, but we need more. Can you get inside their systems? Emails? Internal communications? Vivian thought of Malik Odoms, the IT tech who had warned her to be careful. Maybe, she typed back. Working on it. Day 10. A letter arrived at the Airbnb, hand-delivered. No postage, just her name on the envelope and the Crestwood Marsh logo in the corner. Vivian opened it carefully. Read it twice. Dear Ms. Vivian Mercer, it has come to our attention that you have engaged in a pattern of concerning behavior during your recent visits to Crestwood Marsh properties, including but not limited to 1. Refusal to comply with standard security protocols. 2. Unauthorized presence in restricted areas. 3. Aggressive and confrontational conduct toward staff members. Effective immediately, you are hereby prohibited from entering any Crestwood Marsh property. Violation of this notice may result in criminal prosecution under Georgia Code Section 16-721, criminal trespass. This notice is issued in accordance with our duty to maintain a safe environment for our employees and tenants. Sincerely, Wendell Pruitt, Esquire General Counsel, Crestwood Marsh Industries, Inc. Vivian read it a third time. Then she placed it carefully in her documentation folder. Every accusation in the letter was false. She had records proving it. Time-stamped recordings, written policies, witness statements. But they didn't know that. They thought they were dealing with a woman in a gray wool coat who didn't belong. They thought a threatening letter would make her disappear. They had no idea who she was, and she wasn't going to tell them. Not yet. Day 12. Vivian stood on the public sidewalk outside Crestwood Marsh headquarters, 50 feet from the entrance, on city property, completely within her rights. She held her phone at waist level. Recording. The lobby doors opened. Hank Crenshaw walked out. His stride was aggressive before he even reached her. You got some nerve, lady. I'm on public property. I don't care if you're on the moon. You were told to stay away from this building. The letter prohibited me from entering Crestwood Marsh property. The sidewalk is municipal property. I'm not in violation of anything. Hank stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. Close enough that a jury would call it intimidation. You think you're smart? You think knowing a few laws makes you special? I think knowing the law is a basic civic duty. His face reddened. A vein pulsed in his temple. I spent 15 years as a cop. You know what I learned? The law is whatever I say it is. Out here, on this street, looking at this building, I am the law. He jabbed a finger toward her face, stopped an inch from her nose. Vivian didn't flinch. Her weight stayed centered. Her hands stayed visible. She had been trained to de-escalate situations like this. She had also been trained to remember every detail. You're recording this, aren't you? Georgia is a one-party consent state for audio recording, and I'm standing in a public space with no reasonable expectation of privacy. If you'd like, I can cite the specific statute. OCGA, Section 16-11-62. Something shifted in Hank's eyes. Uncertainty, maybe fear. Who are you? Vivian lowered the phone, slipped it into her pocket. I'm someone you should have treated differently, Mr. Crenshaw. She turned, walked away. Walked. She didn't look back, but she could feel his eyes on her until she turned the corner. Day 13. The parking garage beneath Crestwood Marsh Tower. 7:45 p.m. Vivian shouldn't have been there. She knew that, but she had received a message from Malik Odoms. "I have what you need. P2 level 730. Come alone." The garage was nearly empty at this hour. Concrete pillars, fluorescent lights, the smell of exhaust and old oil. She heard footsteps before she saw anyone. Not Malik, Hank Crenshaw, and two other men in security uniforms. "You just don't learn, do you?" Vivian's back was against a concrete pillar. No exits within 20 feet. 3 men approaching from the front. "This is private property," Hank said. "You are trespassing, and we have every right to detain you until the police arrive." "I was invited." "Invited by who? Nobody here invited you anywhere." Hank smiled. It wasn't friendly. "The way I see it, you broke in. You were looking to steal something, and when we tried to stop you..." He cracked his knuckles. "You resisted." The other 2 guards spread out, flanking positions, standard containment formation. Vivian's mind raced. She had been in worse situations, but that was before, in another life, with different resources. "I'm going to reach into my pocket," she said calmly, "for my phone, to call the police myself." "I don't think so." Hank grabbed her wrist, hard. His fingers dug into her skin. Vivian didn't think. Muscle memory took over. She dropped her weight, twisted her arm. The motion broke his grip, a technique that worked against larger opponents precisely because it didn't rely on strength. Hank stumbled forward, off balance. One of the other guards lunged. Vivian sidestepped, used his momentum against him, guided him into the concrete pillar with a palm strike to his shoulder blade. He hit the concrete, hard, stayed down. The third guard hesitated. That hesitation cost him. Vivian was already moving. She didn't run. She walked, quickly, toward the stairwell. Her heart pounded, but her feet were steady. "Stop her!" Hank's voice echoed through the garage. But she was through the stairwell door before anyone could reach her. Up 1 flight, 2 flights, exit onto the street. She didn't stop walking until she was 3 blocks away, surrounded by crowds, anonymous again. Her wrist throbbed where Hank had grabbed her. There would be bruises tomorrow. She pulled out her phone. The recording was still running. 7 minutes, 18 seconds of documented assault. Day 14, the Airbnb, 8 a.m. Vivian examined her wrist in the bathroom mirror. The bruises had bloomed overnight. 5 distinct finger marks, purple and yellow against her dark skin. She photographed them, dated the photos, added them to the documentation folder. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Ms. Mercer?" A woman's voice, older, authoritative. "This is Harrison Blackwell's office. Mr. Blackwell is an independent director on the Crestwood Marsh Board. He would like to speak with you. Privately." Vivian paused. Harrison Blackwell. She knew the name. 72 years old, former chairman of a Fortune 500 bank, one of 3 independent directors who had been appointed to the board before her acquisition. "About what?" "He didn't say, but he suggested you might find it mutually beneficial. A meeting with a board member, before the reveal, before anyone was supposed to know who she was." "When and where?" "Today, noon. The Capitol Grill on Peachtree. He'll be in the private dining room." The line went dead. The Capitol Grill was exactly what Vivian expected. Dark wood, white tablecloths. The kind of restaurant where deals happened over $70 steaks and 100-year-old scotch. Harrison Blackwell sat alone in the private dining room. He was smaller than she expected. Thin, white-haired, with glasses that made his eyes look too large. But when he looked at her, she saw something she hadn't seen in any of the other Crestwood Marsh executives. Recognition. "Miss Mercer, please, sit." She sat across from him. A waiter appeared, poured water, disappeared. "You know who I am," Vivian said. It wasn't a question. "I know who you were, before you became whoever you are now." Blackwell's voice was soft, precise. Vivian Mercer, graduated summa cum laude from Howard University, MBA from Wharton. 10 years at Goldman Sachs, then disappeared from the financial world entirely in 2015. Resurfaced 3 years later as the managing partner of Obsidian Holdings Group, a private equity firm that doesn't advertise and doesn't explain. He paused, took a sip of water. I also know that Obsidian Holdings Group acquired 51% of Crestwood Marsh Industries 3 weeks ago, which means, unless I'm very much mistaken, you're my new boss. Vivian didn't confirm or deny. How do you know this? Because I'm very good at my job, Miss Mercer. I've been on corporate boards for 30 years. I know how to read SEC filings that other people ignore, and I know how to add 2 and 2. He smiled, faintly. The real question is, why are you here? Why spend 2 weeks being treated like a trespasser in your own building? Due diligence. Due diligence was completed before the acquisition. I've seen the reports. You know exactly what Crestwood Marsh is, the lawsuits, the settlements, the culture. He leaned forward. So I'll ask again. Why are you really here? Vivian considered her answer carefully. Because reports tell you what people do when they know they're being watched. I wanted to see what they do when they think no one is watching. And what did you find? Exactly what I expected, and worse. Blackwell nodded slowly. Then you understand why I asked to meet. I've been on this board for 8 years. I've watched Rutherford Marsh turn his grandfather's company into a liability. I've filed concerns with the other independent directors. I've been ignored, overruled, marginalized. He took off his glasses, polished them with a cloth napkin. But now, for the first time, someone has the power to actually change things. You. What do you want, Mr. Blackwell? I want to help. When you make your move, and we both know you're going to make a move, I want to be on the right side of it. Vivian studied him, looking for the angle, the hidden agenda. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Not yet. Trust is earned. He put his glasses back on. But I can offer you something as a gesture of good faith. Information. What kind of information? Blackwell glanced toward the door, making sure they were alone. Someone warned Rutherford about Obsidian's acquisition attempt 2 weeks before you closed the deal. Someone outside the company sent him an email. I don't know who, but I know the email exists because Rutherford mentioned it in a board executive session. He said, and I quote, "Don't worry about Obsidian. I've been assured it's being handled." Vivian felt something cold settle in her chest. Someone tried to stop the acquisition. Someone is still trying to stop you. Whatever you're planning, be careful. You have enemies you don't know about yet. He stood, placed a $100 bill on the table. I'll be in touch, Ms. Mercer. And for what it's worth, welcome to Crestwood Marsh. He left without looking back. Day 15. Vivian sat in the Airbnb, laptop open, phone recording. The email from Marcus had arrived that morning. V. Ran the background you requested. Crestwood Marsh has settled 17 discrimination complaints in the past 12 years. NDAs on all of them. Total payout, $8.4 million. I've also found evidence of at least 3 complaints that were filed with the EEOC but voluntarily withdrawn before investigation. All 3 complainants received payments within 60 days of withdrawal. Pattern is clear. Let me know how you want to proceed. M. 17 settlements. $8.4 million in hush money. 3 EEOC complaints that disappeared. Vivian closed the laptop, looked at the photographs on the wall. Rutherford Marsh, Paige Thornberry, Wendell Pruitt, Hank Crenshaw, Celine Rourke. 5 faces. 5 people who had built careers on making problems disappear. But she wasn't a problem. She was an owner. And it was almost time to remind them of that. Day 17. The confrontation in the parking garage had made the news, sort of. A small item in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's police blotter. Trespasser at Crestwood Marsh Tower. Security personnel detained a woman who allegedly entered the parking structure without authorization. No arrests were made. No mention of the assault. No mention of the recording. No mention of the bruises that still marked Vivian's wrist. The story had been managed, minimized, made to disappear. But Vivian had the recording. And today, she had something else. Her phone buzzed. Message from Malik Odoms. Check your email. Encrypted attachment. Password is the date we first met. No spaces. Be careful. They're watching everything. Vivian opened her laptop. Found the email. Typed the password. October 23. The attachment downloaded. A zip file containing 47 email threads from the Crestwood Marsh internal server. She started reading. The emails were damning. Thread 1. Paige Thornberry to Rutherford Marsh. Subject: Problem in the lobby. Ruth, the black woman from yesterday came back. She's asking about executive space now. I gave her the College Park redirect, but she didn't take the hint. We need to be more aggressive about screening out these applicants before they waste our time. Thread 7. Rutherford Marsh to Wendell Pruitt. Subject: Legal action. Wendell, prepare a trespass notice for the woman Hank has been dealing with. Make it scary. I want her gone before she becomes a real problem. And make sure there's nothing in writing that looks like profiling. You know how to handle these things. Thread 15. Internal memo from HR. Subject: Diversity metrics. Confidential. Note: per Mr. Marsh's directive, diversity hiring targets have been suspended pending economic review. All open positions should prioritize cultural fit as the primary criterion. Please ensure this guidance is communicated verbally only. Do not put in writing. Thread 31. Hank Crenshaw to Rutherford Marsh. Subject: Security incident. Mr. Marsh. Good news. The trespasser showed up at the parking garage. We confronted her. She resisted and fled. I've prepared an incident report that documents her aggressive behavior and refusal to comply with lawful security instructions. If she tries to make a complaint, we have documentation that she was the aggressor. Let me know if you need anything else. Vivian read that last email 3 times. They had fabricated a report, created false documentation, built a paper trail designed to protect themselves and incriminate her. This wasn't just discrimination. This was conspiracy, witness tampering, obstruction. She picked up her phone, called Marcus. I need to meet with you, in person, today if possible. What's happened? I have everything, and it's worse than we thought. This is the moment everything changes. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. You won't believe what happens next. Day 18. Marcus Wellington's office was in a nondescript building in Buckhead. No nameplate on the door. No receptionist. Just a conference room, a secure server, and a man who had spent 30 years making powerful people very nervous. Vivian spread the printed emails across the conference table. Marcus read them in silence. When he finished, he looked up. His expression was grim. This is enough for a federal case. Pattern and practice discrimination. Conspiracy to interfere with civil rights. Possibly witness tampering under 18 U.S.C. 1512. I know. But you're not going to file a federal case, are you? No, not yet. Because you want something else first. Vivian nodded. I want to see their faces. When they realize who I am. When they understand that every single thing they did, every email, every threat, every lie, was documented. I want to be in the room when their world falls apart. Marcus leaned back in his chair. That's not due diligence, Vivian. That's revenge. It's accountability. There's a difference. Is there? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The board meeting is in 3 days, she said instead. Quarterly review. Standard agenda. Except I'm going to add an item. What item? Change of ownership notification. Formal introduction of the new majority shareholder. She smiled. For the first time in weeks. Me. Day 19. Vivian spent the day preparing. Documents, recordings, the USB drive from Malik. Everything organized, cataloged, cross-referenced. She also made a phone call. Mr. Blackwell, it's Vivian Mercer. Ms. Mercer, I've been expecting your call. The board meeting, day after tomorrow, I'm going to attend. I assumed as much. What do you need from me? When the vote comes, and there will be a vote, I need you to second the motion. A pause. What motion? Removal of Rutherford Marsh III as CEO. For cause. Under Article 4, Section 3 of the Corporate Bylaws. Another pause. Longer this time. You're not just changing the company. You're burning it down and rebuilding from the ashes. I'm doing what should have been done years ago. Are you with me or not? Silence. Then, I'll second your motion, Ms. Mercer. God help us both. Day 20. The morning of the board meeting. Vivian stood in front of the mirror in her Airbnb bathroom. The gray wool coat was gone. The faded jeans were gone. The woman who looked back at her wore a black Armani suit, a white silk blouse, and an expression that could cut glass. She had spent 2 weeks being invisible, being dismissed, being threatened and assaulted and lied about. Today, she would be seen. The elevator to the 46th floor required board-level authorization. Vivian had it. She had obtained it legally 3 weeks ago. She simply hadn't used it. The doors opened onto the executive conference room. 14 chairs around a mahogany table. Crystal water glasses. The Marsh family crest embossed on the leather chairbacks. 13 of the chairs were occupied. Rutherford Marsh at the head of the table. Paige Thornberry to his right. Wendell Pruitt to his left. Celine Rourke in a support chair against the wall. And 9 board members, including Harrison Blackwell, who was the only one not looking surprised. Vivian walked in. The room went silent. Rutherford's face cycled through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, rage. What is she doing here? Security! Someone call security! That won't be necessary. Vivian's voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had planned this moment for a very long time. My name is Vivian Mercer. I'm the managing partner of Obsidian Holdings Group LLC, and as of 3 weeks ago, I own 51% of the voting shares of Crestwood Marsh Industries. She placed a folder on the table. SEC Form 8K, the official notification. In other words, Mr. Marsh, I own you. Rutherford's face had gone white. Paige Thornberry's mouth hung open. Wendell Pruitt was frantically flipping through papers. That's impossible, Rutherford stammered. Obsidian is a passive investor. You were assured by someone who was wrong. Or lying. Possibly both. Vivian pulled out a chair and sat down. Now, I believe we have some business to discuss. The next hour was chaos. Wendell Pruitt demanded verification of the documents. He got it. Marcus had prepared a comprehensive legal packet that answered every possible objection. Rutherford Marsh threatened lawsuits. Vivian reminded him that suing your own majority shareholder rarely ended well for the plaintiff. Paige Thornberry tried to leave the room. Vivian suggested she stay, unless you want to miss the part where I read your emails out loud. Paige sat back down, and through it all, Vivian remained calm, methodical. She presented the evidence like a prosecutor building a case. The discriminatory comments, the illegal directives, the fabricated incident reports, the conspiracy to create false documentation. When she reached the email from Hank Crenshaw, the one describing how they had prepared a fake report about her aggressive behavior, she paused. Mr. Crenshaw is currently in the lobby. I asked building management to detain him pending this meeting. She looked at Rutherford. I thought you might want to explain to the board why your head of security was coordinating the creation of false police reports at your direction. Rutherford said nothing. His hands were shaking. I also have this. Vivian held up her phone, pressed play. Hank's voice filled the room. The law is whatever I say it is. Out here, on this street, I am the law. She let it play for 30 seconds, then stopped it. There's more. 7 minutes of Mr. Crenshaw threatening me, grabbing me, and attempting to detain me without legal authority. I also have photographs of the bruises. She pulled them up on her phone, passed it around the table. One board member, an older woman with silver hair, actually gasped. This, Vivian said, is the culture of Crestwood Marsh Industries. This is what happens when no one is watching. This is what I found during my due diligence. Silence. Harrison Blackwell cleared his throat. I move that Rutherford Marsh III be removed as CEO, effective immediately, for cause under Article 4, Section 3 of the Corporate Bylaws. Specifically, conduct detrimental to the company's reputation and legal standing. Seconded, said the silver-haired woman. Her nameplate read, Margaret Chen, Independent Director. All in favor? 8 hands went up, then 9, then 10. Rutherford looked around the table, at the people who had been his allies, his subordinates, his friends. No one met his eyes. Motion carries, Blackwell said. Rutherford Marsh III is hereby removed as Chief Executive Officer of Crestwood Marsh Industries. Rutherford stood. His chair scraped against the floor. You can't do this. My family built this company. My grandfather— Your grandfather built a real estate empire, Vivian interrupted. You built a discrimination factory. There's a difference. She stood, faced him directly. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and leave the building. After that, security will escort you out, and Mr. and Marsh? She stepped closer. If you ever set foot in any Crestwood Marsh property again, I will personally ensure that every email, every recording, and every document in my possession is delivered to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Are we clear? Rutherford's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. He walked out of the room. Paige Thornberry followed, then Celine Rourke, then Wendell Pruitt. The door closed behind them. Vivian stood at the head of the table. 13 board members looked at her, some with shock, some with respect, some with fear. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, let me tell you what happens next. But before she could continue, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Ms. Mercer, we need to talk about Project Magnolia and about what Rutherford Marsh really knew. She stared at the message. Someone had known about her acquisition before it happened. Someone had warned Rutherford. Someone was still out there, watching, waiting. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The boardroom emptied slowly. One by one, the directors filed out, some pausing to shake Vivian's hand, others avoiding eye contact entirely. Margaret Chen, the silver-haired independent director who had seconded the motion, lingered at the door. Ms. Mercer, what you did today took courage, but be careful. Rutherford has friends, powerful friends. This isn't over. I know. Chen nodded once, then left. Harrison Blackwell remained seated. He waited until the door clicked shut before speaking. The message you received during the meeting. I saw your face change. Vivian pulled out her phone, read the text again. Someone knows about Project Magnolia. That was my internal code name for the acquisition. Only 3 people had access to it. Me, Marcus, and my head of operations in New York. Then you have a leak. Or someone hacked my systems. She set the phone down. Either way, someone has been watching me since before I set foot in Atlanta. Blackwell removed his glasses, polished them with a handkerchief. A nervous habit, she noted. There's something I didn't tell you at our lunch, something I wasn't sure was relevant. Tell me now. 3 weeks before your acquisition closed, Rutherford received a visitor. Not in the office, at his home. I only know because I was there dropping off documents for a signature. He paused. The visitor was a woman, late 50s, gray suit, government plates on her car. Government? State government. Georgia tags, but the kind that don't trace back to any specific agency. He put his glasses back on. Rutherford introduced her as an old friend of the family. But the way she looked at me, the way she looked at everything, that wasn't a social visit. Vivian filed the information away. A government connection. Someone with resources. Someone who wanted to protect Rutherford Marsh. Or the system he represented. Do you remember anything else about her? Name? Agency? Anything? No name. But I remember what she said as she was leaving. Blackwell's voice dropped. She said, "Don't worry about Obsidian. We're handling it." Those exact words. We, not I. We. Vivian had more than one enemy. She had an organization. So, the elevator descended from the 46th floor. Vivian stood alone, watching the numbers tick down. 45, 44, 43. Her phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Impressive performance in the boardroom. But removing Rutherford doesn't change anything. The system protects itself. You'll learn that soon enough. She typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Someone who knows what happened to the last person who tried to change Crestwood Marsh from the inside. Ask about Eleanor Vance, 2019. Then decide if you want to keep playing this game. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Vivian stepped out into chaos. Police officers, 6 of them, standing in a semicircle around Hank Crenshaw, who was shouting loud enough to echo off the marble walls. "I told you, I'm the head of security. You can't detain me in my own building." A sergeant, African-American, mid-40s, with the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much, held up a hand. "Sir, we received a complaint about an alleged assault. We need to ask you some questions. You can answer them here, or you can answer them at the precinct. Your choice." "Assault? That woman attacked me. She—" Hank's eyes found Vivian across the lobby. His face contorted. "There, that's her. That's the one who should be arrested." The sergeant turned, looked at Vivian, back at Hank. "Sir, the complaint was filed by Ms. Mercer. She has video evidence and medical documentation of bruising consistent with being grabbed. Do you have any evidence supporting your version of events?" Hank's mouth opened, closed. He had a fabricated incident report, but the report was on Crestwood Marsh letterhead. And as of 20 minutes ago, Vivian Mercer controlled Crestwood Marsh. "That report was falsified," Vivian said, stepping forward. "I have email documentation showing Mr. Crenshaw coordinated with former CEO Rutherford Marsh to create false records about our encounter. I've already forwarded copies to your department." The sergeant's eyebrows rose. "Ma'am, are you saying there's a conspiracy to file false police reports?" "I'm saying there's evidence that should be examined. I'm not a prosecutor. I can't make that determination, but your investigators can." Hank lunged. It happened fast. 1 second he was standing with the officers, the next he was charging across the marble floor, hands outstretched, face twisted with rage. "You ruined everything." Vivian didn't run. She shifted her weight, dropped her center of gravity. When Hank's hands reached for her throat, she wasn't there anymore. She had pivoted left, caught his wrist, and used his momentum to send him stumbling past her. He crashed into a decorative planter. Soil and ferns scattered across the floor. 3 officers were on him before he could stand. Handcuffs clicked. "Hank Crenshaw, you're under arrest for assault. You have the right to remain silent." The sergeant approached Vivian. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" "No, I moved in time." "That was impressive footwork." "I took some classes." The sergeant gave her a long look, the look of someone who recognized training when he saw it. "We'll need a statement. Can you come to the precinct this afternoon?" I'll be there at 3. If you're hooked on this story, hit subscribe right now. The next part will blow your mind. 3 hours later, Atlanta Police Department, Zone 5 Precinct. Vivian sat in an interview room that smelled like old coffee and desperation. Across from her, Detective Rhonda Patterson reviewed a tablet showing the parking garage footage. Let me make sure I understand. You were invited to this location by a Crestwood Marsh employee. When you arrived, Mr. Crenshaw and 2 other security guards cornered you. Mr. Crenshaw grabbed your wrist. We can see that here. And you defended yourself using what appears to be some form of martial arts training. Self-defense training. Basic techniques. Uh-huh. Patterson zoomed in on the footage. Basic techniques don't usually result in a 200-pound man bouncing off a concrete pillar. Vivian said nothing. Ms. Mercer, I'm going to be straight with you. This case is complicated. You're the new owner of the company where the alleged assault took place. The alleged assailant is a former police officer with 15 years on the force. There are going to be people who say this is a setup, a corporate power play. There are emails documenting a conspiracy to create false evidence against me. There's video of Mr. Crenshaw grabbing me without provocation. There are photographs of bruises that match his grip pattern. Vivian leaned forward. If that's a setup, it's the most elaborately documented setup in history. Patterson set down the tablet. What do you want out of this? I want accountability. If Mr. Crenshaw assaulted me, he should face the same consequences anyone else would face, not more, not less. And the others? Marsh? Thornbury? That's for federal investigators to determine. I've already filed a complaint with the EEOC. I've also sent documentation to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Patterson whistled softly. You're not playing around. I've never played around, Detective. I just didn't have the resources to be heard before. Vivian stood. Are we done? For now. But Ms. Mercer? Patterson's voice stopped her at the door. Watch your back. Men like Crenshaw, men who spent their careers with badges. They have friends. And those friends don't always wear uniforms. Day 21. Vivian sat in what was now her office, the corner suite on the 47th floor, formerly occupied by Rutherford Marsh III. She had removed most of his personal effects, but the smell of his cologne still lingered in the curtains. On the wall, she had hung a single photograph. Ruby Bridges, 6 years old, walking into William Frantz Elementary School in 1960, surrounded by U.S. Marshals. The first black child to integrate an all-white school in the Deep South. Some battles had to be fought alone. Her laptop displayed the results of an overnight search. Eleanor Vance, 2019, Crestwood Marsh. The search had returned exactly one relevant result, a small article in the Atlanta Business Chronicle dated March 2019. Crestwood Marsh settles employment dispute. Terms confidential. No details, no names, just a 2-paragraph notice that a former employee had reached a settlement with the company over workplace concerns. But the anonymous texter had given her a name, Eleanor Vance, and Vivian had resources now that she hadn't had before. She picked up the phone, called Marcus. I need you to find someone. Eleanor Vance. She worked at Crestwood Marsh until 2019. There was a settlement, sealed, probably with an NDA, but I need to know what happened to her. Vivian, if there's an NDA, she won't be able to talk to you. I don't need her to talk. I just need to find her. What she does after that is her choice. A pause. This is connected to the text messages you received? Someone wants me to know about her. Someone who's been watching me since before I arrived in Atlanta. She looked at the Ruby Bridges photograph. I need to know why. Day 23. The email from Marcus arrived at 6:14 a.m. Eleanor Vance, age 42, former Director of Human Resources at Crestwood Marsh Industries, employed 2014 to 2019. Terminated following restructuring, corporate speak for forced resignation. Settlement filed in Fulton County Superior Court. Case sealed by mutual agreement. Current address, 1847 Oakwood Drive, Decatur. Phone number attached. Additional note. Her termination coincided with the voluntary withdrawal of 3 EEOC complaints that I mentioned in my earlier research. She was the HR director who would have processed those complaints. Vivian, this might be your smoking gun. Vivian read the email twice. Then she got in her car. Decatur was 20 minutes from downtown Atlanta. Eleanor Vance's house was a modest Cape Cod on a tree-lined street, the kind of neighborhood where people waved to their neighbors and children played in front yards. Vivian parked across the street, watched the house for 10 minutes. A woman emerged onto the porch, coffee cup in hand, and sat on a swing. Late 40s, graying hair, the posture of someone who had been carrying weight for a long time. Vivian got out of the car. Eleanor saw her coming. Her hand tightened on the coffee cup. "Miss Vance, my name is Vivian Mercer. I know who you are." Eleanor's voice was flat, tired. "You're the woman who took over Crestwood Marsh. I saw it on the news." "May I sit?" Eleanor gestured to the empty half of the porch swing. Vivian sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The swing creaked softly. "You shouldn't be here," Eleanor said finally. "The NDA? I'm not asking you to violate your NDA. I'm not recording this conversation. I just want to understand what happened." "Why? You already won. You took the company. You got Rutherford fired. What else is there?" Vivian pulled out her phone, showed Eleanor the text messages. "Someone has been watching me since before I arrived in Atlanta. Someone who knew about my acquisition before it was public. Yesterday, they told me to ask about you." She put the phone away. "I'm not here because I won. I'm here because I'm trying to figure out who's playing a game I don't understand." Eleanor stared at the street. A car passed. A dog barked somewhere. "I can't tell you what happened. I signed papers. If I talk, I lose everything. The settlement money, the house, my daughter's college fund." Her voice cracked. "But I can tell you this. What they did to you, the discrimination, the threats, that's not new. That's been happening for years. And every time someone tried to fight back, they made it disappear. The complaints, the evidence. Sometimes," she paused, "sometimes the people." "What do you mean, the people?" Eleanor's hand shook. Coffee splashed over the rim of the cup. "I can't say more. I'm sorry. I can't." Vivian reached into her pocket, pulled out a business card. "If you ever change your mind, if you ever feel safe enough to talk, my direct line is on the back." She stood, started to walk away. "Ms. Mercer?" Vivian turned. Eleanor's eyes were wet. "Be careful. The people who protect that company, they're not just executives. They're not just lawyers. She swallowed. "They're everywhere, in places you wouldn't expect." "Government?" Eleanor didn't answer, but her silence was answer enough. Day 25. The Crestwood Marsh HR department was in chaos. With Rutherford gone, Page terminated, Wendell resigned, and Hank awaiting trial, the company's leadership had been decapitated. Vivian had appointed an interim CEO, Harrison Blackwell, who had agreed to serve for 90 days while she conducted a national search. But the real work of restructuring fell on her shoulders. She sat in the HR conference room, reviewing personnel files. One stack for employees to keep, one stack for employees to investigate, one stack for employees to terminate. The terminate stack was growing. A knock at the door. Malik Odoms stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in a shirt and tie. "Ms. Mercer, you wanted to see me?" "Come in. Close the door." He sat across from her. His leg bounced nervously. "Relax, Malik. You're not in trouble." She slid a folder across the table. "I've been reviewing your performance records. 3 years at Crestwood Marsh. Exceeds expectations on every review. No promotions. No raises beyond cost of living adjustments. You're doing the work of a senior engineer on the salary of an entry-level technician." Malik's jaw tightened. "I was told there was a freeze on promotions. Budget constraints." There was no freeze. There was a policy, unwritten but clear, to limit advancement for employees who didn't fit a certain profile. She opened the folder. "I'm offering you a new position, Director of IT Security, reporting directly to the CISO I'm hiring next month. 40% salary increase, stock options, full benefits." Malik stared at her. "Director? Ms. Mercer, I don't have the experience." "You have exactly the experience I need. You know where the bodies are buried, figuratively speaking. You know which systems have been compromised, which records have been altered, which employees have been complicit in covering up misconduct." She leaned forward. "I need someone I can trust in that position. Someone who has seen what this company really is and still chose to do the right thing. Is that you?" Malik was quiet for a long moment. "When I gave you those emails, I knew I could lose everything. My job, my career, maybe worse." He looked up. "I did it anyway because I couldn't keep being part of something rotten. If you're serious about changing this place, really changing it, not just rearranging the furniture, then yes, I'm in." Vivian extended her hand. "Welcome to the executive team, Director Odoms." Day 28. The EEOC regional office in Atlanta occupied 3 floors of a federal building on Peachtree Street. Vivian arrived at 9 a.m. for a meeting that had been scheduled with unusual speed. The investigator assigned to her case was a man named Douglas Whitmore, mid-50s, salt and pepper beard, the methodical manner of someone who had spent decades untangling corporate misconduct. "Ms. Mercer, I've reviewed the documentation you submitted. Emails, audio recordings, personnel files, incident reports." He set down a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. "This is one of the most comprehensive complaints we've received in years. I wanted to make your job easier. You've certainly done that." He opened the folder. "Based on our preliminary assessment, there's substantial evidence of a pattern of discriminatory treatment against black visitors and employees at Crestwood Marsh Industries. This includes selective enforcement of security protocols, racially hostile workplace communications, and retaliatory actions against individuals exercising protected rights under Title VII." Vivian nodded. She had written similar assessments herself, in another life. "What happens now?" "We'll conduct a full investigation, interviews with current and former employees, subpoenas for additional documents, site visits." He paused. "I should tell you, investigations like this typically take 12 to 18 months, sometimes longer. The process is thorough, but it's not fast." "I understand. There's also the matter of potential referral to the Department of Justice." Whitmore's voice dropped slightly. "If we find evidence of a pattern or practice of discrimination, we can refer the case to the Civil Rights Division for federal enforcement action under 42 U.S.C. Section 2000E6. That would mean consent decrees, federal monitors, mandatory reforms." "That's what I want. Not punishment. Reform. Real structural change that outlasts any individual." Whitmore studied her. "Most complainants want damages, settlements, vindication. I own the company now, Mr. Whitmore. Suing myself for damages seems counterproductive." She stood. "I want Crestwood Marsh to become what it should have been all along. An EEOC investigation, a thorough public investigation, is the best way to force that transformation. It removes my personal interest from the equation. It makes the reforms about the law, not about me." Whitmore nodded slowly. "I've been doing this job for 23 years. You're the first majority owner who has ever asked me to investigate their own company. Then let's make history, Mr. Whitmore." If you're still watching, drop a comment telling me what you think will happen next. And don't forget to subscribe. The ending will shock you. Day 30. The call came at 7:42 a.m. Vivian was in her home office. She had moved from the Airbnb to a rented townhouse in Midtown, reviewing financial projections when her phone displayed an unknown DC number. "Ms. Mercer, this is Senator Diane Holloway's office. The senator would like to speak with you. Can you hold?" Before Vivian could respond, the line clicked. 30 seconds of silence. Then a new voice, older, sharper, with the carefully modulated tone of someone who had spent decades in front of cameras. "Ms. Mercer, thank you for taking my call. Senator Holloway, this is unexpected. I imagine it is. I'll be direct. I don't have much time between committee hearings." A rustling of papers. "I've been following the situation at Crestwood Marsh with great interest. The EEOC complaint, the personnel changes, the fact that you voluntarily opened your own company to federal investigation. It seemed like the right thing to do. It was, and it's exactly why I'm calling." Holloway's voice shifted. Less formal, more personal. "My subcommittee is preparing hearings on corporate diversity practices. We've been looking for companies willing to serve as case studies, both negative examples and positive ones. Crestwood Marsh could be both. You want me to testify? I want you to tell your story. Not as a victim, not as a crusader. As a business leader who saw a broken system and decided to fix it from the inside." A pause. "It's a powerful narrative, Ms. Mercer, the kind that can change policy, maybe even change law." Vivian walked to the window, looked out at the Atlanta skyline. 47 floors of glass and steel, visible even from here. "When would these hearings take place?" 3 months from now. Plenty of time to prepare. My staff will handle logistics. All you need to do is show up and tell the truth." "I've been telling the truth for weeks, Senator. Most people don't want to hear it." "Then let's make them listen." Day 32. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Malik Odoms appeared in Vivian's office doorway, holding a laptop like it contained nuclear codes. "Ms. Mercer, I found something. Close the door." He sat down, placed the laptop on her desk, turned the screen to face her. "I've been going through the backup servers, the ones that were supposed to be wiped after the board meeting. Turns out, the wipe was incomplete. I recovered about 60% of the deleted files." "What kind of files?" "Emails, mostly. Rutherford's personal archive."
"But there's one that's different." He clicked a folder. This was hidden in a partition that required administrator access. It was encrypted with a key that wasn't in our standard protocol. Someone was hiding something from the company's own IT department. Exactly. Malik opened a file. "I cracked the encryption last night. It took me 14 hours. And when I saw what was inside..." He turned the laptop to face her fully. An email, dated 3 weeks before Vivian's acquisition closed. The sender address was partially redacted, but the domain was visible, georgia.gov. From @georgia.gov to r.marsh3@crestwood-marsh.com. Date, subject, Obsidian Inquiry. "Ruth, I've run the names through our system. Obsidian Holdings Group is a legitimate private equity firm, but the ownership structure is opaque. Shell companies in Delaware. Nominee directors. Someone is going to great lengths to stay hidden. My contacts at the SEC can delay the filing, but only for 72 hours. After that, the acquisition becomes public record. You need to move now. Consolidate your voting block. Reach out to the institutional shareholders. If you can get them to reject the tender offer, Obsidian walks away with nothing. I've attached a list of shareholders who might be persuadable. Use the usual channels. And Ruth, be careful. Whoever is behind Obsidian has resources. This isn't some activist investor looking for a quick profit. This is someone with an agenda. We'll update when I know more. Is he?" Vivian read the email 3 times. Someone in the Georgia state government had been feeding Rutherford Marsh intelligence about her acquisition. Someone with contacts at the SEC. Someone who referred to usual channels for influencing shareholders. "See," she said.
Any idea who that is? I've been digging. The email headers trace back to a server in the Georgia Secretary of State's office, but the specific user account was deleted the day after your acquisition closed. They covered their tracks. Most of them. But whoever C is, they made one mistake. Malik clicked to another file. This is a log of remote access sessions to Rutherford's encrypted partition. Someone accessed it from outside the building 4 times in the past month. The IP address traces to a state government facility in downtown Atlanta. Can you identify the specific user? Not yet, but I know the building, and I know someone who works there. Malik's expression darkened. Ms. Mercer, if there's a government official actively working against you, this goes way beyond corporate discrimination. This is corruption. Vivian closed the laptop. Forward everything to my personal server, encrypted, then delete all traces from the Crestwood systems. You're not going to report this? Not yet. I need to know who C is first. And I need to know why the Georgia state government cares so much about protecting Rutherford Marsh. Day 35. The answer came in a phone call. Vivian was leaving the office at 8:15 p.m. when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Ms. Mercer, we need to meet. A woman's voice. Older, familiar somehow. Who is this? Someone who has been watching you for a very long time. Longer than you know. A pause. I'm the one who sent you the text messages about Project Magnolia, about Eleanor Vance. Vivian stopped walking, stood in the middle of the parking garage. Why? Because I wanted to see what you would do with the information. Whether you would pursue it or let it go. Whether you were the real thing, or just another corporate raider looking for profit. And what did you conclude? That you're dangerous. To the wrong people, anyway. The woman's voice softened slightly. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the Oakland Cemetery, the Confederate Memorial. Come alone. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, but you're going to come anyway. Because you need to know the truth about Crestwood Marsh, about what really happened to Eleanor Vance, about why certain people in this state will do anything to stop you. The line went dead. Oakland Cemetery covered 48 acres in the heart of Atlanta. Established in 1850, it held the remains of Confederate soldiers, civil rights leaders, and ordinary citizens. A history of the South compressed into weathered granite and overgrown paths. Vivian arrived at 9:45 a.m. She walked slowly through the grounds, passing monuments to the dead, until she reached the Confederate Memorial, a 65-foot obelisk surrounded by graves of soldiers who had fought to preserve slavery. A woman sat on a bench nearby, late 50s, gray suit, silver hair pulled back severely. She looked exactly as Harrison Blackwell had described. Vivian sat down beside her. You're C, she said. Not a question. The woman smiled thinly. I'm one of many letters, Ms. Mercer. But yes, I'm the one who sent the emails to Rutherford. You work for the Georgia government. I work for certain interests within the Georgia government. Interests that have maintained a mutually beneficial relationship with the Marsh family for 3 generations. She turned to face Vivian. Face D. My name is Caroline Marsh. Vivian processed the information. Marsh. Your family? Rutherford's aunt. His father's sister. I never married into money like the rest of them. I earned my power the old-fashioned way, through politics, 30 years in state government, friends in every agency, favors owed by people who have long since forgotten why they owe them. Then why are you here? Why tell me any of this? Caroline's expression shifted. Something that might have been regret flickered across her face. Because my nephew is a fool. He inherited a company worth billions and turned it into a liability. He discriminated against employees, harassed visitors, and created a paper trail so damning that even I couldn't make it disappear. She shook her head. I tried to warn him about Obsidian, tried to give him time to fight the acquisition, but he was so arrogant, so convinced of his own invincibility that he didn't listen. So you're here to... what? Ask for mercy? I'm here to offer you a deal. Caroline reached into her jacket, pulled out a flash drive. Everything I have, 30 years of records, every favor, every back-channel communication, every arrangement between the Marsh family and Georgia state government. Campaign contributions, zoning decisions, EEOC complaints that were encouraged to disappear. Vivian looked at the flash drive. Why would you give me this? Because I'm 71 years old, Ms. Mercer. I have cancer, stage 3, inoperable. The doctors give me 18 months, maybe less. Caroline's voice was steady, matter of fact. I spent my entire career protecting a family that didn't deserve protection. I covered up discrimination. I buried complaints. I helped destroy the career of a woman named Eleanor Vance because she tried to do the right thing. What happened to Eleanor? Caroline was silent for a long moment. She found evidence, documentation of systematic discrimination going back decades. She tried to report it internally, and when that failed, she went to the EEOC, so we made her disappear. Made her disappear? Not killed, nothing so dramatic. We just erased her, forced resignation, settlement with an NDA so restrictive she can't even tell her own family what happened. Blacklisted her from every HR position in the Southeast. The last I heard, she was working as a substitute teacher in Decatur, trying to pay off the house she bought when she still had a career. Vivian thought of Eleanor Vance on her porch, the weight she carried, the fear in her eyes. You destroyed her life because she tried to tell the truth. Yes. Caroline didn't flinch. And I've done the same thing to others, more than I can count. It's what I was paid to do. Protect the family, protect the company, protect the system. Then why are you telling me this now? Caroline placed the flash drive on the bench between them. Because I'm dying, and I don't want to die knowing that everything I built will continue. The corruption, the cover-ups, the quiet destruction of anyone who threatens the status quo. She stood, looked down at Vivian. You're not like Rutherford. You actually believe in something. Use this information. Burn it all down. And maybe, something better can grow from the ashes. She turned and walked away, disappearing among the tombstones. Vivian sat alone on the bench for a long time. The flash drive felt heavy in her hand. 30 years of corruption, exposed by someone who had spent a lifetime creating it. She didn't know whether to feel grateful or disgusted. Maybe both. Day 38. Marcus Wellington's secure conference room, 4 a.m. The files from Caroline's flash drive spread across every surface. Vivian, this is unprecedented. Marcus held up a document, campaign contributions to 12 state legislators, funneled through shell companies. Quid pro quo arrangements for favorable zoning decisions. Evidence of witness tampering in at least 4 civil rights cases. It's enough to bring down the entire network. It's enough to bring down half the Georgia state government. Marcus set down the document. But that's not necessarily good news for you. If you release this, you won't just be fighting Crestwood Marsh. You'll be fighting an entire political machine. These people have resources, connections, the ability to make your life very difficult. They've already made my life difficult. The difference is, now I have weapons. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do with this? Vivian looked at the documents. The evidence of decades of corruption. The quiet destruction of countless careers. I want to give it to Senator Holloway. Let her use it in her hearings. Make it part of the public record, protected by congressional immunity. That's actually brilliant. Marcus nodded slowly. If it comes out through a Senate investigation, they can't suppress it, can't buy their way out, can't threaten the witnesses into silence. And I stay clean. No appearance of personal vendetta, just a concerned citizen providing information to a congressional inquiry. You've been planning this for a while. Vivian thought of Eleanor Vance, of the 3 years she had spent building Obsidian Holdings. of the $2.3 billion she had bet on the belief that money could change things. I'd been planning this my entire life, Marcus. I just didn't know it until now. Day 42. The Senate hearing room was packed. Senator Diane Holloway sat at the center of a raised dais, flanked by 6 other committee members. Below them, a witness table held a single microphone. Vivian Mercer sat behind it. Ms. Mercer, thank you for appearing before this committee today. Holloway's voice was formal, but Vivian caught the flicker of acknowledgement in her eyes. Please state your full name and current position for the record. Vivian Rebecca Mercer, managing partner of Obsidian Holdings Group LLC and majority shareholder of Crestwood Marsh Industries, Incorporated. Ms. Mercer, you've submitted extensive documentation to this committee regarding discriminatory practices at Crestwood Marsh. Can you summarize, in your own words, what you experienced during your time at the company? Vivian leaned toward the microphone. Senator, I spent 3 weeks at Crestwood Marsh undercover. I wanted to see how the company treated people when no one was watching, specifically how they treated black visitors and employees who didn't fit their expectations of who belonged in their spaces. She paused, looked at the cameras. What I found was a systematic pattern of discrimination. Security protocols applied selectively based on race. Executives directing staff to steer black visitors toward lower-income neighborhoods. Coordinated efforts to create false documentation when someone challenged their treatment, and when I persisted, physical intimidation and assault. Holloway nodded. And you documented all of this? Every interaction, every incident, audio recordings, video footage, email communications, internal memoranda. Vivian pulled out a folder. I've submitted 417 pages of evidence to this committee. It represents the most comprehensive documentation of corporate discrimination that I'm aware of in recent history. A murmur ran through the hearing room. Holloway raised her hand for silence. Ms. Mercer, you also provided documentation suggesting a connection between Crestwood Marsh leadership and certain Georgia state government officials. Can you tell us about that? I can, Senator. Vivian took a breath. Evidence I've obtained indicates that members of the Marsh family maintained long-standing relationships with government officials who assisted them in suppressing discrimination complaints, influencing regulatory decisions, and retaliating against whistleblowers. This wasn't just corporate misconduct. It was a network of corruption that spanned decades and involved individuals at the highest levels of state government. The hearing room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Holloway banged her gavel repeatedly. Order! We will have order in this chamber. When the noise subsided, Holloway leaned forward. Miss Mercer, you understand the gravity of what you're alleging? I do, Senator, and I'm prepared to provide this committee with documentation supporting every claim I've made. Names, dates, transactions, everything. Holloway looked at her colleagues, then back at Vivian. Then let's get started. The hearing lasted 6 hours. Vivian testified about the lobby incident, the parking garage assault, the fabricated reports, the emails coordinating retaliation, the connection to state government officials. She testified about Eleanor Vance, carefully, without violating the NDA that Eleanor herself still feared. She described a pattern of destroying whistleblowers, without naming specific individuals. And she testified about Caroline Marsh, the dying woman who had decided, at the end, to expose the system she had spent her life protecting. When it was over, Vivian walked out of the hearing room into a corridor crowded with reporters. Camera lights blinded her. Questions came from every direction. She didn't answer any of them. She just walked. This is the moment you've been waiting for. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You need to see how this ends. Day 45. Crestwood Marsh headquarters. The CEO's office. Vivian's office. She sat at her desk, watching the news coverage on mute. CNN, MSNBC, Fox. Even the local Atlanta stations, which had initially treated her story as a curiosity, were now covering it as front-page news. Senate investigation expands to include Georgia state officials. Former HR director breaks silence on discrimination cover-up. DOJ opens civil rights investigation into Atlanta real estate giant. The dominoes were falling. Eleanor Vance had come forward the day after the hearing. The committee had offered her immunity from her NDA, congressional subpoena power trumped private contracts, and she had told her story. All of it. 2 Georgia state legislators had resigned. A third was under indictment. Caroline Marsh had died 3 days ago at a hospice in Savannah. Her obituary mentioned her decades of public service and made no reference to the scandal consuming her family's legacy. Rutherford Marsh III had retreated to a family estate in the mountains. His lawyers were negotiating with the DOJ, trying to arrange a deal that would keep him out of prison. Paige Thornberry had been arrested on obstruction charges. Wendell Pruitt had turned state's evidence in exchange for immunity. Hank Crenshaw was awaiting trial on assault charges. His defense attorney claimed he had been following orders. The jury would decide whether that mattered, and Vivian Mercer sat alone in her office, watching it all unfold on screens that showed her own face, over and over, as the woman who had brought down an empire. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. EEOC report just released. Formal finding of pattern and practice discrimination. DOJ consent decree in negotiation. Federal monitor to be appointed. You did it. She read the message, set the phone down. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired, hollow, like someone who had been running for years and finally stopped, only to realize she didn't know where she was anymore. A knock at the door. Malik Odoms. Miss Mercer, I have the final report on the security footage you requested. She had almost forgotten. The 10 minutes of missing footage from her first day at Crestwood Marsh. 8:45 to 8:55 a.m. The gap that had never been explained. What did you find? Malik sat down. His expression was troubled. I recovered about 7 minutes of the 10. The rest is permanently corrupted. Someone used military-grade deletion software. But the 7 minutes I found... He placed a tablet on her desk. Hit play. The footage showed the lobby. Vivian walking in, looking at the security notice, reading the posted regulations. And then, someone else, a woman, stepping out of a side corridor, watching Vivian for 30 seconds, then pulling out a phone, making a call. The woman's face was clear on the footage. Caroline Marsh. She was there, Vivian said quietly. The first day. She saw me arrive. She knew who you were from the beginning, Malik said. She was tracking you, reporting your movements to Rutherford, or someone else. Vivian stared at the frozen image. Caroline Marsh, in the lobby of Crestwood Marsh, watching a stranger who would turn out to be the company's new owner. Had she known, even then, how this would end? Had she seen, in Vivian's face, the destruction of everything she had built? Or had she simply been doing her job, protecting the family, suppressing the threat, unaware that the threat was already inside the gates? Delete this, Vivian said finally. Malik looked startled. Ms. Mercer? Caroline Marsh is dead. Her crimes have been exposed. The system she protected is collapsing. Vivian turned away from the screen. Let her rest. Whatever she was at the beginning, she tried to make it right at the end. That has to count for something. Malik hesitated, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. He left. Vivian sat alone in the silence. Day 49. The settlement was announced at 2 p.m. Crestwood Marsh Industries had agreed to a consent decree with the Department of Justice. The terms included a federal monitor appointed for 36 months to oversee civil rights compliance, mandatory anti-discrimination training for all employees, an independent review of all HR decisions from the past 10 years, a $12 million fund to compensate victims of documented discrimination, public acknowledgement of historical failures in ensuring equitable treatment of all individuals. The press release was 8 pages long. Vivian had approved every word. Standing at the window of her office, she watched the news vans assemble in front of the building. Reporters doing stand-ups, cameras pointing at the Crestwood Marsh logo like it was a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. Her phone rang. Harrison Blackwell. Vivian, I just saw the announcement. You did it. We did it. You seconded the motion that started all of this. I pushed a domino. You built the entire track. A pause. What happens now? Vivian looked at the Ruby Bridges photograph on her wall, a 6-year-old girl walking into history, surrounded by people who wanted her to fail. Now we do the hard part. We actually change things, not just announcements and consent decrees, real change in how people are hired, how they're treated, how complaints are handled, how power is shared. That's going to take years. I know, I'm not going anywhere. Blackwell was quiet for a moment. You know, when I first heard about Obsidian's acquisition, I thought it was just another corporate takeover. A new owner looking to squeeze out profits and flip the company in 5 years. And now? Now I think you might actually mean what you say, which makes you the most dangerous person I've ever met. Vivian smiled faintly. I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one. Day 52. The office was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. Vivian sat at her desk, reviewing the first draft of a new employee handbook, one that Malik had helped her write, one that would codify protections that should have existed from the beginning. A knock at the door. She looked up. A young woman stood in the doorway, early 20s, nervous, wearing a Crestwood Marsh security uniform. Ms. Mercer? I'm sorry to bother you. I'm Tanya Rhodes. I worked under Mr. Crenshaw. Vivian set down the handbook. Come in, Ms. Rhodes. Tanya entered slowly, sat on the edge of a chair like she was ready to flee at any moment. I wanted to apologize for what happened to you, the day in the lobby, the parking garage. Her voice cracked. I was there, both times. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I just let it happen. Vivian studied her, young, scared, probably supporting a family on a security guard's salary. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've been thinking about it every day since you took over, about what kind of person I am, what kind of person I want to be. Tears spilled down Tanya's cheeks. I grew up watching my grandmother fight for things, civil rights, voting rights. She marched in Selma when she was 17, and I just stood there while they did those things to you. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Ms. Rhodes, do you know why I bought this company? Tanya shook her head. Because I wanted to prove something, that systems can change, that people can change, that the courage your grandmother showed, and millions of others like her, wasn't wasted. She stood, walked around the desk, sat in the chair next to Tanya. You made a mistake. You stayed silent when you should have spoken. But you're here now, speaking. That counts for something. Does it? It's a start. Vivian reached into her drawer, pulled out a card. I'm putting together a new security team. People I can trust. People who understand that protecting this building means protecting everyone in it, not just the people who look a certain way. She handed Tanya the card. Think about whether you want to be part of that. If you do, call this number. Tanya looked at the card, then at Vivian. Why would you give me a second chance after what I did? Because someone gave me a second chance once, a long time ago, when I didn't deserve it. Vivian walked back to her desk. We can't change what we did. We can only change what we do next. Tanya stood, wiped her eyes. Thank you, Ms. Mercer. She left. Vivian turned back to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in its towers. Change was slow, painful, uncertain, but it was possible. That would have to be enough. Chapter Day 55. The final loose end. Vivian sat in her townhouse living room, a glass of wine untouched on the table, staring at her laptop. The email had arrived that morning, from an address she didn't recognize. Ms. Mercer, I know you've been looking into the missing security footage from your first day at Crestwood Marsh. The 10 minutes that were deleted. I have the complete recording, unedited, including audio. It shows Caroline Marsh making a phone call, not to Rutherford, but to someone else. Someone whose name you haven't heard yet. Someone who is still out there, still watching, still protecting the interests that Caroline served for 30 years. The system she exposed wasn't complete. There are others. Deeper connections. Relationships that span generations and cross state lines. If you want to know the truth, meet me. Same place as before. Oakland Cemetery. Tomorrow. 6 a.m. This time, I'll give you everything. A friend. Vivian read the email again. Another anonymous message. Another invitation to dig deeper. Another layer of conspiracy waiting to be exposed. She thought about Caroline Marsh, dying in a hospice, confessing her sins, trying to make things right at the end. She thought about Eleanor Vance, finally free to tell her story, but still carrying the scars of what had been done to her. She thought about Rutherford and Paige and Hank and Wendell, all facing consequences, but consequences that felt somehow inadequate. Suspensions and settlements and consent decrees. Not justice, just process. And now this. Another thread to pull. Another secret to uncover. Another battle to fight. She could ignore it. Delete the email. Focus on running the company, implementing the reforms, building something better from the wreckage. Or she could go to Oakland Cemetery at 6 a.m. tomorrow, alone, and find out how deep the rot really went. Vivian picked up the wine glass, took a long drink. She knew what her grandmother would say. You don't stop fighting just because you're tired. You don't stop digging just because you're afraid of what you'll find. She opened her laptop, typed a reply. I'll be there. Day 56. Oakland Cemetery. The Confederate Memorial. 6 a.m. The morning mist hung low over the gravestones, turning the world into shades of gray. Vivian walked slowly among the monuments, her footsteps silent on the dew-wet grass. No one was waiting at the bench this time. She checked her phone. No new messages, no updates. She waited 10 minutes, 15, 20, no one came. At 6:25, her phone buzzed. A single text from the anonymous address. Change of plans. Check the grave of Confederate General Clement A. Evans, 3rd row from the memorial. Look beneath the flowers. Vivian found the grave. Weathered granite, barely legible inscription. A small bouquet of fresh flowers, incongruous among the ancient dead. She moved the flowers aside. A small metal box, half buried in the soil. Inside, a USB drive and a handwritten note. Ms. Mercer, the people I work for wanted me to lure you here, to silence you the way they silenced others. I couldn't do it. This drive contains everything. Names, dates, the full extent of the network that Caroline Marsh served. It goes higher than you imagine. State government, federal contracts, connections to industries you haven't touched yet. I can't meet you in person. They're watching me now. But I can give you this. Use it wisely. And trust no one. A friend who wants to become something better. Vivian looked around. The cemetery was empty. The mist was lifting, revealing a pale morning sun. She pocketed the USB drive, left the flowers where they were. As she walked back to her car, she thought about the note. Trust no one. That was the problem with fighting systems. They were everywhere. In places you expected and places you didn't. In allies who might be enemies and enemies who might become allies. But she had come too far to stop now. The battle for Crestwood Marsh was over. She had won, or won enough. But the war for something larger,
For a world where people like her didn't have to fight just to be seen, just to be heard, just to exist. That war would never end. Vivian got in her car, started the engine. She had work to do. 6 weeks later. The conference room on the 47th floor had been completely renovated. New furniture, new art on the walls, not Marsh family portraits, but photographs of civil rights pioneers, Atlanta landmarks, ordinary people going about their lives. Vivian stood at the head of the table, facing a room full of new hires. The senior leadership team she had spent months assembling. People chosen for competence, integrity, and commitment to change. Malik Odams, director of IT security, sat at the far end. He gave her a small nod. "Welcome to Crestwood Marsh Industries," Vivian said. "Or rather, welcome to what Crestwood Marsh is becoming. Some of you know the company's history, the discrimination, the cover-ups, the culture of protecting power at all costs." She paused, looked at each face around the table. That history doesn't disappear just because we want it to. It's embedded in the systems, the processes, the unwritten rules that shaped how this company operated for decades. Our job isn't just to manage a business. It's to dismantle those systems and build something better in their place. She pulled out a document, the new employee handbook, finalized, printed, ready for distribution. "This is our starting point, not our ending point, our starting point. These policies mean nothing if we don't enforce them, if we don't hold ourselves accountable, if we don't speak up when we see something wrong." She set down the document. "I spent 3 weeks in this building being treated like I didn't belong. I was threatened, assaulted, lied about. And the entire time there were people who saw what was happening and said nothing, did nothing." Her voice hardened. "I don't blame them. The system was designed to punish people who spoke up. But that system is gone now, and in its place, we're going to build something where speaking up is rewarded, not punished. Where doing the right thing is the easiest thing, not the hardest." She looked at Malik. "It won't be easy. There will be setbacks. People will resist. Old habits will reassert themselves when we're not watching. But that's why we're here. To watch, to push, to never stop fighting for the company we know this can become." She smiled. For the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. "So, let's get to work." That night, Vivian sat alone in her office. The city glittered below, millions of lights against the darkness. On her desk, the USB drive from Oakland Cemetery. Still unopened. Still waiting. She picked it up, turned it over in her hands. The note had said the network went higher than she imagined. State government, federal contracts, connections spanning industries. One USB drive, one woman, one decision. She could open it, follow the threads wherever they led, keep fighting until there was nothing left to fight. Or she could set it aside. Focus on what she had already won. Build something lasting at Crestwood Marsh and let the larger battles wait. Vivian looked at the Ruby Bridges photograph. A 6-year-old girl. Walking into a school where no one wanted her. Surrounded by people who wished her harm. She had kept walking anyway. Vivian plugged the USB drive into her laptop. The screen filled with files. Hundreds of them. Names, dates, transactions. The skeleton of a conspiracy that stretched back decades and spread across state lines. She started reading. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the battles being fought in quiet rooms, unaware of the woman who had bought a company with $2 billion and changed it with sheer will, unaware that the war was just beginning. The final message arrived 3 hours later, from the unknown number that had started everything. "You opened the files. Good. Now you know what you're really fighting. Sleep well, Ms. Mercer. Tomorrow, the real work begins. A friend." Vivian read the message. She didn't reply. She just turned back to the screen and kept reading. The city lights flickered below. Somewhere, a siren wailed. The hum of life continuing, indifferent to the secrets being uncovered in a 47th floor office.
Vivian Mercer had won a battle, but she had also uncovered a war she hadn't known existed, and she was just getting started, 6 months later. The courtroom was silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's keys. Vivian Mercer sat in the gallery, third row from the front, watching Hank Crenshaw rise to hear his sentence. His orange jumpsuit hung loose on a frame that had lost 30 pounds since his arrest. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by something hollow. "Mr. Crenshaw, you have been found guilty of assault in the 3rd degree and filing a false police report." Judge Martha Collinsworth's voice carried the weight of 30 years on the bench. "These crimes, while serious on their own, take on additional gravity given your 15-year career in law enforcement. You, of all people, should have understood the importance of respecting the rights of others." Hank's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "The court sentences you to 18 months in state custody, with eligibility for parole after 12 months. Additionally, you are permanently barred from employment in any security or law enforcement capacity in the state of Georgia." Hank's shoulders sagged. His lawyer whispered something. Hank shook his head. "Do you have anything to say before the court concludes these proceedings?" For a long moment, Hank said nothing. Then he turned, looked directly at Vivian. "I was just doing my job." Judge Collinsworth's gavel came down. "Court is adjourned." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Vivian pushed through them without speaking, flanked by 2 members of her new security team. Both women, both former FBI, both handpicked for their integrity. A black SUV waited at the curb. She climbed in. The door closed, shutting out the noise. "Back to the office, Ms. Mercer?" "No." She looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. "Take me to Decatur." Eleanor Vance's house looked different now. The lawn was freshly mowed. New shutters on the windows. A child's bicycle in the driveway. Vivian knocked. Waited. The door opened. Eleanor looked 10 years younger than she had 6 months ago. The weight was still there, would probably always be there, but it sat differently now, like something she carried by choice rather than compulsion. "Ms. Mercer, I saw the news, the sentencing. May I come in?" Eleanor stepped aside. The living room was modest but warm. Family photographs on the walls. A college acceptance letter framed above the fireplace. Eleanor's daughter, headed to Spelman in the fall. They sat across from each other. Neither spoke for a moment. "I wanted to thank you," Vivian said finally, "for testifying, for coming forward when you didn't have to." "I had to. After everything that happened." Eleanor shook her head. "I spent 5 years hiding. 5 years letting them win. When you gave me the chance to fight back, I couldn't say no. It cost you. It freed me." Eleanor smiled, the first genuine smile Vivian had seen from her. "The NDA is void now. The settlement money is mine to keep. The court ruled that voiding the agreement due to fraud didn't require repayment, and next month I start a new job." "Where?" "The EEOC, regional office in Atlanta. They offered me a position as a senior investigator." Eleanor's eyes glistened. "I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." Vivian felt something loosen in her chest, a knot she hadn't known she was carrying. That's exactly what I hoped for." "I know." Eleanor reached out, took Vivian's hand. "Thank you. For not giving up. For fighting when anyone else would have walked away." Vivian squeezed her hand. "We're not done yet. There's more to uncover. More people to hold accountable. I know. But today, let's just celebrate this. One victory at a time." If you've made it this far, you're part of something special. Subscribe and turn on notifications. There's more to this story than you can imagine. 8 months later. The Senate hearing room was packed again, but this time Vivian wasn't alone at the witness table. Beside her sat 3 other women, executives from different companies, different industries, all with similar stories. Senator Diane Holloway opened the proceedings. This committee has spent the past year investigating patterns of corporate discrimination across multiple sectors. Today, we hear testimony from business leaders who have not only experienced this discrimination firsthand, but have taken extraordinary steps to combat it within their own organizations. She turned to Vivian. Ms. Mercer, since we last spoke, the reforms at Crestwood Marsh Industries have become a model for corporate accountability nationwide. Can you update the committee on your progress? Vivian leaned toward the microphone. Senator, in the past 8 months, Crestwood Marsh has implemented comprehensive changes to our hiring, promotion, and complaint resolution processes. We've hired a chief diversity officer with direct reporting access to the board. We've established an anonymous hotline for employees to report concerns, and we've made our diversity metrics public, not because the law requires it, but because transparency is the only way to ensure accountability. She paused. But I want to be clear about something. These reforms didn't happen because I'm a good person. They happened because I had power. I owned 51% of the company. I could fire executives. I could change policies. I could force the changes that others had been begging for years. Her voice hardened. The problem isn't that there aren't good people in corporate America. The problem is that good people don't have power. The systems are designed to concentrate authority in the hands of people who benefit from the status quo. Until we change those systems, through legislation, through shareholder activism, through public pressure, we'll keep having these hearings, and nothing will change. Holloway nodded slowly. What specific legislative changes would you recommend? 3 things. First, mandatory public reporting of diversity metrics for all companies above a certain size. You can't fix what you can't measure. Second, strengthened whistleblower protections, including financial incentives for employees who report discrimination. Third, and most importantly, criminal penalties for executives who knowingly cover up civil rights violations. Not just fines, prison time. A murmur ran through the hearing room. You're proposing treating discrimination cover-ups like fraud. I'm proposing treating them like what they are, crimes that destroy lives and perpetuate inequality. White-collar criminals go to prison for stealing money. Why shouldn't they go to prison for stealing someone's career, someone's dignity, someone's future? Holloway was quiet for a long moment. Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Your testimony will be entered into the record. 10 months later, the Crestwood Marsh annual shareholders meeting. Vivian stood at the podium, looking out at a room full of investors, analysts, and board members. Harrison Blackwell sat in the front row, a faint smile on his face. When I acquired this company 18 months ago, it was hemorrhaging value, not because of market conditions, because of culture, discrimination lawsuits, settlement payments, employee turnover, the hidden costs of treating people like they don't matter. She clicked to a new slide. Financial charts, all trending upward. Today, I'm pleased to report that Crestwood Marsh has had its most profitable year in company history. Revenue is up 23%. Employee retention has improved by 41%. And our customer satisfaction scores have reached an all-time high. Another slide. This one showed diversity metrics. More importantly, our workforce now reflects the communities we serve. Black employees make up 28% of our staff, up from 11% 18 months ago. Women hold 44% of leadership positions, up from 19%. And our pay equity audit found no statistically significant gaps based on race or gender. She paused. Let the numbers sink in. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you this because there's a persistent myth in corporate America that diversity is expensive, that inclusion is a luxury, that treating people fairly hurts the bottom line. She leaned forward. That myth is a lie told by people who benefit from inequality, a lie designed to protect the status quo. The truth is, discrimination is expensive. Exclusion is expensive. Creating a workplace where talented people can't succeed because of what they look like, That's the real drag on profitability. Applause. Scattered at first, then building. Vivian raised her hand. We're not done. We're never done. But today, we can say something that Crestwood Marsh has never been able to say before. We're trying to be better. And we're succeeding. 1 year later. The knock came at 3 a.m. Vivian was awake. She rarely slept more than 4 hours anymore, reviewing files from the USB drive she had received at Oakland Cemetery. A year of investigation had revealed a network even larger than she had imagined: state officials in 3 states, federal contractors, a web of favors and payments that stretched back decades. She opened the door to find Malik Odoms, still dressed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. We have a problem. The Situation Room at Crestwood Marsh headquarters had been set up 6 months ago, after Vivian realized the scope of what she was dealing with. Secure communications, encrypted servers, a team of former federal investigators working around the clock. Malik pulled up a map on the main screen. Remember the USB drive? The files showing connections between the Marsh network and federal contractors? Of course. I've been tracing the money. Shell companies, offshore accounts, the usual laundering techniques. But tonight, I found something different. He zoomed in on a cluster of transactions. These payments aren't going to politicians or business executives. They're going to a private security firm, Blackwood Solutions, based in Virginia but operating internationally. What kind of operations? Officially, corporate security consulting. Unofficially, Malik pulled up a dossier. They've been linked to surveillance operations, intimidation campaigns, and, in at least 2 cases, violence against whistleblowers. Vivian felt cold. Violence? A journalist in Texas who was investigating connections between oil companies and state regulators. Car accident. Single vehicle. No witnesses. Malik's voice was flat. A union organizer in Michigan who was building a case against a manufacturing plant. Home invasion. Nothing stolen, just beaten badly enough to require 6 months of rehabilitation. And you think they're connected to the Marsh network? I think they're the enforcement arm. The people who handle problems that can't be handled through legal channels. Vivian stared at the screen. The web of connections. The pattern of violence. Have they targeted anyone connected to Crestwood Marsh? Malik hesitated. That's what I need to show you. He pulled up a new file. Surveillance photographs. A woman getting into her car, walking into a coffee shop, entering her apartment building. The woman was Vivian. These were taken over the past 3 weeks, posted to a secure server that Blackwood uses for client communications. The metadata confirms they came from their operatives. They're watching me. They're doing more than watching. Malik clicked to another document. This is a communication intercepted yesterday. Encrypted, but we broke it. The message was short. Target confirmed. Awaiting authorization for Phase 2. The next 3 months were the most dangerous of Vivian's life. She moved out of her townhouse, rotating between safe houses that her security team had established. She varied her routes to work, never taking the same path twice. She installed bulletproof glass in her office and hired 2 additional bodyguards, former Secret Service, recommended by Senator Holloway. But she didn't stop working. The files from the USB drive went to the FBI. The surveillance photographs went to the Department of Justice. The intercepted communications went to a congressional committee investigating private military contractors. Slowly, carefully, she built a case. The confrontation came on a Tuesday afternoon. Vivian was leaving a meeting at the federal courthouse when she noticed the man following her. Tall, athletic build, moving with the controlled economy of someone with military training. She didn't run. She walked steadily toward her car, where 2 of her security team were waiting. The man caught up to her in the parking garage. 3rd level. No cameras. She had checked. Miss Mercer? She turned. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s, clean-shaven, eyes that had seen things. My employers want you to know that you're making a mistake. Your employers can tell me themselves, if they're brave enough. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. They're not in the habit of direct communication. That's why they have people like me. People who take surveillance photos, who send threatening messages. Vivian stepped closer. People who run journalists off the road? The man's expression didn't change. I'm here to deliver a message. The investigation stops. The files disappear. You focus on running your company and forget everything else. In exchange, no one gets hurt. And if I refuse, then things become complicated. Vivian felt her security team moving closer, but she held up a hand to stop them. Let me tell you something about complicated. Her voice was steady. I spent 3 weeks being threatened, assaulted, and lied about by people who thought they were untouchable. I brought down a CEO. I exposed a network of corruption that went all the way to the state capitol. I've testified before Congress. I've survived everything your employers have thrown at me. She stepped closer still, close enough to see the pulse in his neck. So when you go back to whoever sent you, tell them this. I'm not afraid. I'm not going to stop. And if they want to stop me, they're going to have to do better than sending a messenger. The man stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a genuine smile, tinged with something like admiration. I told them you'd say that. He reached into his jacket. Vivian's security team tensed. He pulled out a business card. Plain white. A single phone number. When you're ready to hear their side of the story, call this number. You might be surprised by what you learn. He turned and walked away, disappeared into the shadows of the parking garage. Vivian looked at the card. The number was a 202 area code. Washington, D.C. Key. This is where most people would give up. But Vivian Mercer isn't most people. Subscribe now to see how this ends. 2 months later. She made the call. The meeting took place in a private room at a restaurant in Georgetown. White tablecloths, crystal glasses. The kind of place where powerful people decided the fate of the world over $700 wine. The woman waiting for her was in her 60s, silver hair, impeccable suit, the calm, confident bearing of someone who had been making decisions for decades. Miss Mercer, thank you for coming. Vivian sat down across from her. You're not what I expected. The woman smiled. I rarely am. My name is Margaret Ashworth. I represent certain interests that have been watching your career with great interest. Blackwood Solutions, among other things. Blackwood is a tool, like a hammer or a scalpel. The question isn't whether the tool is good or bad. It's who's wielding it and why. That's a convenient philosophy for someone who orders people beaten. Margaret's smile didn't waver. I understand your anger. The tactics used against the journalist, the union organizer, those were mistakes. Overreach by operatives who didn't understand the limits of their authority. They've been disciplined. Disciplined. Terminated, in the employment sense. Margaret sipped her water. I'm not here to defend everything my organization has done. I'm here to make you an offer. What kind of offer? Margaret leaned forward. You've spent the past 18 months fighting corruption at Crestwood Marsh, and you've won. But you've also discovered that Crestwood Marsh was just one node in a much larger network. A network that spans industries, crosses state lines, reaches into the highest levels of government. I know all this. What you don't know is why that network exists, what purpose it serves. Margaret's voice dropped. The world is more complicated than it appears, Ms. Mercer. There are forces, economic, political, technological, that most people never see. Forces that require management, coordination, sometimes, yes, enforcement. You're saying corruption is necessary? I'm saying that what you call corruption, others call stability. The network you're trying to expose doesn't just protect corporate interests. It maintains a system that has kept the American economy functioning for decades. Remove it, and you don't get justice. You get chaos. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. That's quite a sales pitch. It's not a pitch, it's an explanation. Margaret reached into her bag, pulled out a folder. This is our offer. Join us. Not as an employee, as a partner. Bring your skills, your resources, your moral clarity. Help us reform the network from the inside. Make it better, more ethical, more accountable. And if I refuse? Then we step back. No more surveillance. No more threats. You continue your investigation, expose whatever you find, deal with the consequences, whatever they are. Margaret smiled. But I think you're smart enough to realize that some battles can't be won by frontal assault. Sometimes the only way to change a system is to become part of it. Vivian looked at the folder, didn't touch it. You're asking me to become what I've been fighting against. I'm asking you to evolve, from crusader to architect, from destroyer to builder. Margaret stood. Take the folder, read it. Think about what kind of change you really want to create. She placed a $100 bill on the table. The wine is excellent here. I recommend the 2015 Bordeaux. She left. Vivian sat alone for a long time. Then she opened the folder. Three weeks later. Vivian stood in her office at Crestwood Marsh, watching the sun set over Atlanta. The folder from Margaret Ashworth sat on her desk. She had read it 7 times. The offer was real, detailed, specific, a position on a board that officially didn't exist, overseeing organizations that operated in the shadows. The chance to shape policy, influence decisions, redirect resources. The chance to do more than she could ever do alone. The door opened. Malik Odoms entered. You wanted to see me? Close the door. He did, waited. I need your opinion on something. Vivian turned from the window. If you had the chance to change a corrupt system from the inside, to become part of it in order to fix it, would you take that chance? Malik considered the question. Depends on whether you trust yourself not to become what you're trying to change. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. Malik sat down. Systems are powerful, Ms. Mercer. They shape the people inside them. You think you can change the system, but the system is also changing you. The question is, which force is stronger? Vivian looked at the folder. I've been offered a position by the people behind the network we've been investigating. Malik's expression didn't change. I figured it was something like that. They say I can do more good from the inside than the outside. Maybe they're right. Malik leaned forward. But let me ask you something. When you first came to Crestwood Marsh, undercover, documenting discrimination, did you do that because you wanted power, or because you believed in something? Vivian didn't answer. The woman I met in that parking garage, handing me her card, telling me to be careful. She wasn't trying to join anything. She was trying to burn it down. Malik stood. Whatever you decide, make sure it's because you believe in it, not because someone convinced you it was the smart play. He left. Vivian stood alone in the fading light. The next morning, Vivian made a phone call. Margaret Ashworth answered on the second ring. Ms. Mercer, I've been waiting to hear from you. I've made my decision. And? Vivian looked at the Ruby Bridges photograph on her wall, a 6-year-old girl walking into history. No. Silence on the other end. I'm not interested in reforming your network. I'm not interested in becoming a partner in a system built on corruption and intimidation. I'm going to keep doing exactly what I've been doing, exposing the truth, holding people accountable, building something better from the wreckage. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Vivian's voice hardened. "And let me be clear about something. If Blackwood Solutions comes near me again, if anyone associated with your network threatens me, my employees, or anyone I care about, I will burn everything down. I will release every file, every document, every piece of evidence I have. I will testify before Congress, speak to every journalist who will listen, and make sure the whole world knows exactly who you are and what you've done. That would destroy more than just us. It would create chaos. Then stay away from me and find out if I'm bluffing." She hung up. 2 years later, the Crestwood Marsh Community Center opened on a Saturday morning in October. Built on land donated by the company, funded by a trust that Vivian had established from her personal wealth, the center provided job training, legal aid, and educational programs for underserved communities across Atlanta. Vivian stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by faces that represented everything she had been fighting for. Eleanor Vance, now a senior EEOC investigator. Malik Odoms, promoted to Chief Technology Officer. Tanya Rhodes, head of the new Community Outreach Division. And dozens of others. Employees, community members, allies who had joined the cause. Senator Diane Holloway spoke from the podium. 2 years ago, Vivian Mercer walked into a lobby and was told she didn't belong. Today, she has created a space where everyone belongs. A space where the values she fought for, equality, dignity, justice, are put into practice every single day. Holloway turned to Vivian. "Ms. Mercer, would you like to say a few words?" Vivian stepped to the microphone. She looked out at the crowd, at the building behind her, at the city she had changed. "When I started this journey, I thought I was fighting against something, against discrimination, against corruption, against people who use their power to hurt others." She paused. "I've learned that fighting against something isn't enough. You have to fight for something. For a world where people are judged by their character, not their color. For workplaces where talent and hard work matter more than connections and conformity. For communities where everyone has the chance to succeed." She looked at Eleanor, at Malik, at the young people gathered in front of the new building. "We haven't won. Not completely. The systems that create inequality are still out there. The networks of power that protect the status quo are still operating. The fight isn't over. It will never be over." Her voice strengthened. "But every time we open a center like this one, every time we promote someone who would have been passed over, every time we tell the truth when it would be easier to stay silent, every time we choose justice over convenience, we win a small victory, and small victories add up." She smiled. "So today, we celebrate. Tomorrow, we get back to work." The crowd applauded. Vivian cut the ribbon. "Boy." That night, Vivian sat alone in her office, the city lights glittering below. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the community center. You've built something meaningful. We're still watching. But we're no longer opposing. Perhaps in time we can find common ground. M.A." Vivian read the message, thought about deleting it. Instead, she saved it, filed it away with all the other evidence she had collected. Then she turned back to the window. The war wasn't over. Might never be over. But she had won something more important than any single battle. She had proven that change was possible. That one person, with enough determination, could challenge systems that seemed unchangeable. That the arc of the moral universe was long, but it bent toward justice, if you were willing to bend it. She picked up her phone, dialed Malik's number. "We need to talk about next steps. I've been looking at expansion opportunities in Chicago. There's a company there with a history similar to Crestwood Marsh." Another acquisition? Another chance to make a difference. She could hear him smiling through the phone. "I'll have the research on your desk by morning." "Good. And Malik?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For everything." "Thank me when we're done." "We're never done." "I know. That's what makes it worth doing." She hung up. Outside, the city breathed. 25 million heartbeats. 25 million stories. 25 million chances to do better. Vivian Mercer stood at the window watching the lights, planning the next battle. The fight continued. It always would.